Welcome back to 10 Things You Didn't Know About Yesterday. Today, we're diving deep into one of football's most heart-wrenching realities, the rise and fall of footballing giants. The football world is one of high stakes and deep pockets, grand prizes and the emptiest of defeats. Some will rise and some will fall, and dramatic, somewhat cliche, lead-up aside, the declines and ultimate downfalls of established teams can be soul-destroying for fans and players alike. With the sporting world solemnly ushering FC Girondins de Bordeaux out the back door onto the scrap heap of destitution, other giants that have fallen from grace in increasingly cutthroat times. Here are the 10 biggest clubs in football history to go bust, and while there are tales of sorrow, there are also testaments to the community hive mind and culture that surround each institution. Redemption is just as powerful as damnation. 1. Wanderers. Instead of a mere suffix in a football team's name, these Wanderers were the real deal. The original Wanderers out of Leytonstone, East London, formed in 1859 and took their name from the fact they never had a home ground. They just wandered about. Although their journey was a little unorthodox, success followed them. The club was a founder member of the Football Association as Forest FC in 1863 and played friendly matches only until the advent of the FA Cup in 1871. They were a dominant force in the early years of the FA Cup, winning the first two editions of the competition. In total, they lifted the trophy 5 times, in 1871 to 72, 1872 to 73, 1875 to 76, 1876 to 77, and 1877 to 78. Consisting largely of former pupils of top English public schools, the club dissolved shortly before the dawn of the Football League era in 1887, as said pupils chose to play for other teams that were cropping up. Many leading players chose to play for their respective old boys team instead. They now continue in amateur form. 2. Hereford United. Hereford United provided one of the greatest moments in FA Cup history when Ronnie Radford scored that goal to stun top-flight Newcastle United in 1972. While Ricky George's winner catapulted the Bulls' magic FA Cup run to the 4th round, where they'd ultimately fall to West Ham United. In the stands, a star was born as John Motson widely cited this game as a catalyst in his iconic commentary career. Back on the pitch, within 4 years, the Bulls had risen 3 tiers after being elected to the Football League. They went from the Southern League to the 2nd Division, although they spent just 1 season there. The following campaigns saw just 2 spent higher than the 4th tier between 1977 and their demise in 2014, at which point they had been relegated back to non-league for the 2nd time in 11 years. That said, while an ever-present Football League team, the plucky Cathedral City team have had a number of great players through the doors. Outside that great FA Cup team, these include Jared Bowen, Peter Galassi, Gary Hooper, Dean Smith, Steve Bull, and many more. 3. FC Dnipro. Soviet champions twice during the 1980s, FC Dnipro produced a surprise run to the final of the 2014 U15 Europa League. They beat teams such as Hajduk Split and FC Copenhagen before the showpiece final in Warsaw saw them narrowly defeated by Unai Emery's Sevilla, who were just beginning to dominate the competition. Unfortunately, that was to be as close as the club from eastern Ukraine ever came to continental glory, as they were banned from UEFA competition due to financial fair play, FFP violations. They went bust in 2019 after failing to pay the promised monetary compensation to players and managers. SC Dnipro 1 currently exists as an unofficial successor. They dissolved in July 2024. 4. ChievoVerona. Just after the turn of the millennium in 2001, ChievoVerona reached Serie A for the first time in their history. However, 10 years later in 2021, and just 2 years after what would prove to be their final top-flight game, the club no longer existed. Chievo were expelled from Serie B for the 2021-22 season for being unable to prove financial viability due to outstanding tax payments. The club argued that there was an agreement in place during the COVID-19 pandemic that allowed them to spread the payments out over a longer period. However, after 3 unsuccessful appeals, the decision to bar ChievoVerona from registering to Serie B was settled, with Cosenza taking their place in Serie B. In May 2024, former striker Sergio Pellissier and the owners of Clivenze, by then in the Serie D League, successfully acquired the logo and naming rights of the original ChievoVerona club in an auction. The club formally changed its denomination to AC ChievoVerona, thus becoming the legal heir to the original club, albeit maintaining white and blue as its colors. 5. AEK Athens. Regardless of being one of Greece's biggest and most successful football clubs, they're second only to Olympiakos, neither of those facts made them immune to financial misfortune. After being bought by a Dutch media company, a crisis period followed in the early 2000s, with mismanagement and many changes in the presidency. In 2004, ex-AEK player Demis Nicolaitis made a plan to progress with the reorganization and financial consolidation, and together with other investors took the majority stake. The plan initially seemed to work, but the downward spiral continued. The team was relegated after the 2012-13 season for the first time in its history, as they were declared bankrupt. In an effort to discharge the immense debt created by years of mismanagement, its directors chose for the team to compete in the third tier. Luckily for their loyal fans, it didn't take them long to restore former glories, earning successive promotions to return to the top flight for the 2015-16 season, then winning the title in 2017-18. Their last title came in 2022-23 when they won the league and cup double. 6. Anzhi Makhachkala. Anzhi Makhachkala reflected a case of flying too close to the sun. Based in the capital of the Russian Republic of Dagestan, Anzhi Makhachkala rose from utter obscurity to the outer reaches of Champions League qualification. Backed by billionaire Suleiman Kerimov, his money pumped into the club and brought in a slew of big names to get the Orly Eagles amongst Europe's elite. High-profile signings included Roberto Carlos, Samuel Eto'o, and Lassana Diarra, while Gus Hiddink spent 18 months as manager. However, while unable to upset the traditional power dynamic with the big clubs in the Russian top tier, Kerimov slashed the club's budget and eventually sold up. In 2022, Anzhi dissolved, apologizing to their fans and expressing a hope to return one day. Ironically, while Kerimov tried to raise the profile in the region, while Anzhi slowly died, another club based in Makhachkala, FC Dynamo Makhachkala, secured promotion to the FNL 3 days prior to the Yellow-Green's demise. 7. FC Girondins de Bordeaux. Six-time French champions, Bordeaux initially fell on hard times, like many clubs did, in 2021. Citing decreased revenue due to the COVID-19 pandemic and loss of income when Media Pro, TV rights holder, went bankrupt and missed payments last year, the club was placed in administration when American owners King Street stated they would no longer support the club financially. In the 2021-22 season, Bordeaux finished last in the league table and were relegated to League Two for the first time since the 1990-91 season, when they were administratively relegated due to financial difficulties. On 14th of June 2022, the DNCG, National Directorate of Management Control, administratively relegated Bordeaux to the Championnat National due to financial issues. Bordeaux appealed that successfully, being reinstated for League Two status for the 2022-23 term. However, it was a losing game. In July 2024, the club informed the French Football Federation that status as a professional football club was given up, with player contracts terminated and the team's training center closed indefinitely. In a press release, the club stated that they would be promoting their youth academies and hope they can play in the Championnat National, third tier the following season, and get back to League One with sound finances and a renewed ambition. 8. Rangers. Technically, the current iteration of Rangers are the same as they've always been, a Glasgow team founded way back in 1872. However, it's a known fact that the club was liquidated in 2012 amid the controversial ownership of Craig White. In May 2011, Craig White bought David Murray's shares for $1. On 13th of February 2012, White filed legal papers at the Court of Session, giving notice of his intention to appoint administrators. The next day, the Rangers Football Club plc, which was subsequently renamed RFC 2012 plc, entered administration over non-payment of $9 million in PAYE and VAT taxes to HM Revenue and Customs. In April, the administrators estimated that the club's total debts could top 134 million. Sevco Scotland Limited, a new company formed by Charles Green, bought the club from administrators and ultimately steadied the ship. While White's acquisition of the club was investigated and financial losses kept coming, the Glasgow side had to start again from the fourth tier. That said, their rapid ascent back to the top flight in the space of 4 years just reinforces their status as a Scottish giant. 9. Parma. Parma were one of Italy's most successful clubs during the 1990s, despite their lack of a Serie A title. They won the Coppa Italia and UEFA Cup twice apiece, as well as the Cup Winners' Cup, all while boasting players like Fabio Cannavaro, Hernan Crespo, and Lilian Thuram, as well as one of the most recognizable cult kits around. Parent company, the Parmalat Dairy and Food Corporation, were a driving reason for funding success on the pitch. Yet the club eventually succumbed to administration in 2004 due to Parmalat's massive bankruptcy with debts of $20 billion in fraudulent activity at Parmalat, worth over $10 billion, and a $167 million net loss by the club in 2003. Parma were hit hard and were eventually declared bankrupt in 2015, having to reform in Serie D. Since then, they have gradually marched back to the top tier, following promotion from Serie B in the 2023-24 season. 10. Napoli. Contrasting the immense passion and joy of 2022-23's Scudetto, Napoli actually went bust back in the early 2000s. Napoli were expelled from the professional league in 2004 and had to reform that year. Driven by their large fan base generating income, particularly through gate revenues and TV rights, Napoli evened out. The club made an aggregate profit in 2006-07 Serie B amid their rise back up the divisions and returned to the top flight in 2010 before qualifying for Europe the season after. The Partenope have continued to be profitable since returning to Serie A. Napoli equity in 2005 was a negative $261,466, having started from $3 million capital. By 2010, the equity was at $107,223, and Napoli achieved self-sustainability. With superb talents like Dries Mertens, Lorenzo Insigne, and Marek Hamsik adding to a dramatic back catalog of greats, Napoli became an established Serie A side once again, before a steady ascent was capped by 2023 Scudetto triumph. Football can be cruel, but it can also be beautiful. These clubs remind us that with passion, loyalty, and determination, even the darkest days can give way to glory. Which of these stories inspired you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to 10 Things You Didn't Know About Yesterday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.